Hi everyone, it's Lori. So a little different video today. I'm going to share a webinar that I did several years ago all around capturing and editing frozen subjects. So it is the season of winter here where I am, and I know many of you, whether it's winter or spring, just giving you some ideas to capture the beauty of something frozen. So let's jump in and get started. All right, so first we're going to talk about capturing and creating frozen objects. And several of the concepts that I have are going to be using your abstract qualities, your creativity to really create something beautiful. So we're going to cover technical components. I'm going to give you some artist inspiration and some ideas to get started in your home or outdoors. So first, some technical tips. Now we could do a whole webinar on technical tips for outdoors, and you really have to work with your settings, your light, to kind of capture what you want it to be. But the good news is really any lens can work. You can capture frozen objects with macro, free lensing, macro filters. You can do a telephoto lens. It really doesn't matter. One tip though is if you have a lot of white, so whether it's snow, ice, just a foggy white day, you want to underexpose to preserve your highlights. So make sure the image isn't too bright. However, if it is snow and you really want that white, your histogram isn't going to read it as white. So what you want to do is make sure you possibly could overexpose that to get that super crisp white that you're looking for. Now, if it's a really sunny day, then I would underexpose. You can also capture frozen images abstract by taking the camera out of focus or using a shallow depth of field, like an f4 2.8 to get something really abstract or dreamy. Of course, light is critical. So if you're indoors, you can add light. If you're outside, you may have to manage your settings, use a tripod, or try to go out once the sun breaks out and decides to show up on those cold winter days. Now, some inspiration for you. So I love to find inspiration when I'm thinking about work that I want to accomplish. And this is an artist that I have followed for years. She's a commercial photographer, and so she has an amazing indoor setup. However, I have replicated similar images, and I'll show you in a minute. I absolutely loved these frozen flowers and containers and how she has shot these in a variety of ways. So I've got her website down here, Paloma Rincon, and you can read all about her beautiful work. So Lisa Sorgini has her website as well, and this is an image of some hydrangeas frozen. You can see the bubbles. There's so many ways to do frozen flowers, frozen fruit. Candace on the other page has a beautiful collection of images with fruit. You can do vegetables. I absolutely love this one with the cherries. Just think it's really beautiful. One tip with frozen things that you do at home in your freezer is your water can sometimes get cloudy. So I do encourage you to pick subjects that are vibrant. So think about a bright red flower or a Gerber daisy that's hot pink. Or in this example, we've got red and blues. Now another is you can go to the website Unsplash, Unsplash. And this is a site where photographers post their images. There are free images. There are also images for sale where you can use the image. But you can search. So if you're just wanting to get ideas, maybe for a portfolio or a personal project, this just gives you a great way. You can search a variety of topics. You can do snowy leaves or snowy backgrounds, whatever it might be. And sometimes it just gives you some fresh ideas. Here's an example where I went to Unsplash and then I found this idea of a macro shot and I just absolutely loved it. I've captured similar before, so it really spoke to me. And here's some more examples that I actually found on Pinterest. So Pinterest is a great resource. You've got ice cubes with little bits of flowers in them. This is a flower, it looks like a pansy underwater with a background or light. You can see fruit and cubes. These little ice cube trays are really fun to work with because it allows you to have something a little bit smaller than a large tray. All right, and here's some images that I shot. This was just on a cold, cold, icy day where there was still this beautiful oak leaf on some concrete, and then capturing really the edge of a leaf with all the beautiful frost. So using any lens, you can get out and think about capturing the beauty of something frozen. Some additional options where, again, I was going for that really soft ethereal. And then on this one, I loved how the light was hitting and creating this bokeh right here in the front of the two petals. Bokeh is this circular abstraction that you get from your aperture in your camera. When the light hits it a certain way, you get these circles. They can be in your background, but they can also show up in frost. Now, these are some of my frozen flowers that I played with and created, and I learned a lot while doing these. I used a cardboard container to get my circular ice cube containers, but I learned that you have to shoot the flowers very, very fast or they start melting. So a couple tricks, we'll discuss that a little bit more later on. Some more of my attempts to work on frozen flowers and some beautiful water drops and ice. And this one I did upside down, thinking that it would help. I could flip it, but I thought it was really fun upside down. I added a texture afterwards. But again, using those kind of frozen containers, similar to Isabella that we saw earlier. So a couple tips for making frozen objects at home. So I've learned over the years that for your container, you really want to stick to plastic, paper milk cartons. You can use glass, but you're going to need to give it some time before you can take the object out of the container. Otherwise, if you try to add hot water or something too fast, it can break the container. Now, your container can be all sizes and shapes. I really love to use ice cube trays, and again, those half and half milk carton containers or pint-sized milk work great. Any subjects can work. So you can do a bouquet of flowers, you can do fruit, metal objects, berries, anything you want. Now, I like to fill the container half full with water, put it in the freezer, give it an hour or so. Once it's a little slushy, then come back and add the rest of your water. That ensures that your flower is completely, or your subject is completely covered in ice. And you do want to leave the lid off for clear ice. Now, I've had some students use sparkling water, distilled water. I've had some people use rosé. So I think you can get really creative. Now, you can shoot on any surface. I do encourage you to consider your light though. And so a lot of times I will stand up and put my frozen object in front of a window on a sunny day. Now, light is really the most critical component. You really need to light your subject, and backlighting works great. So again, we talked about, you can also freeze your items outdoors if you know it's going to be cold enough to freeze, especially if your freezer's full like mine. So capturing frost. So frost can be a great alternative. A lot of times if you live in an area where you don't get necessarily frozen ice or snow, you may get beautiful frosty mornings. So this is an option where you can go out early in the morning and capture those beautiful details. Think about creating something in an abstract manner or grabbing your tripod to focus on those minute details. So if you think about ponds, water features, bird baths, you can also even create a scene at home, outdoors. Maybe you have a table and a container. You could put some items in it, freeze it overnight, and go out and shoot it. Now, frozen landscapes are stunning. If you have ponds near you, water features, maybe a waterfall, bird baths, things like that that freeze over can just create beautiful subjects to capture in winter. Again, you do really have to think about your light source. Now in editing, a couple tricks that you want to do. You definitely want to bring out clarity and the texture on your ice. Unless you want it to be really smooth, most of the time with frost or ice, you actually want to bring out the texture. You can also use your temperature sliders to add coolness, which would be turning it more towards the blue zone to give you that coolness. Or you could add some yellow if you want more warmth. Adjusting your colors, again, giving maybe the scene a touch of blue and just cleaning things up, or even converting to black and white. I'm going to jump over into Lightroom and pull up some images from prior winters and show you a couple editing tips now and how to use some presets. Let's jump in and get started. Okay, so I'm here in Lightroom, and this was an image shot after a snowfall, and I was using a Lens Baby lens, so you'll notice around the edges there's a lot of blur. Now I've got some cleanup I want to do, but we're not going to talk about that today. What I wanted to show you is a couple things that you can do to impact your image. Now, if you feel like your highlights are too high or you notice them, your histogram is going to be way over to the right, which is where your whites are, and that's okay. You can turn on your blinkies and you will see if anything is way out of the range. You could always bring your highlights down, which would be fine. There's not a lot of highlights in this image. It's mainly the whites. Now, to brighten your whites, you have a couple options, but I like to use the tone curve on the gray selection. I like to come in and select a point in my image. Now, your whites are going to be kind of in this area, and so I can just pop those and make those really, really white. If I feel like the image is too bright, I can still bring down my highlights or even move that exposure, but I'm still keeping my whites really, really bright and white, while I can still kind of darken the exposure overall for the image. So play with those as you are editing. Now, the biggest thing I think that you need to consider when you are editing your winter images is the white balance. And I like to manually adjust. You've got your blue slider, which look how that makes that look even colder and more like a winter day. I think it makes a huge impact. Now, if for some reason you're in a place where you want and there's sun out and you want it to have that golden hue, you can move it in that direction. But I think definitely for this image, I want it on the bluer side. You can even make it even more blue. Now for winter images, you have that option of adding some extra texture. You can see how that kind of makes these branches pop. I could also use the mask to input those or impact those. You can bring down your clarity, which is going to give you that soft, kind of dreamy winter look, or you of course could increase it. So use some of the same tools you always do, but just think about them a little bit in a different way. I think a snowy image really is beautiful when you reduce the clarity and just make everything really smooth and beautiful. So those are a couple tips as you're editing. Now let's look at some presets together, and for that I'm going to just pull up another image. You can see how my white balance was totally off in this image. Let's come in now and let's just make that way bluer, really beautiful. Let's increase the blacks to really make those trees pop. I'm also going to pop the whites. Oh, what an immediate difference we get. You can see before and after. I like that so much better. You can decide if you need a little pop to your exposure. I may just give it a little bit. Now, if you are struggling with editing an image, you do have presets that you can use, and there are some beautiful winter presets. So if you go down, you can see this black and white one I love for winter. Isn't that beautiful? You've also got some of these others which are bringing in those tones that I had mentioned before. This looks like evening. I love that one. This one's a little bit more muted black. This one is very, very white. So if you look at it, look at that tone curve. It's going really high. That one's got more magenta tones. This one's a little darker, again, like evening. And this is probably a little bit more normal, but I really love that black and white one, and probably even this kind of muted one. So you've got some options there that you can try, and I think they really make an impact. What's great about a preset is once you apply it, you can still come back and tweak your image. So if I wanted to pop the whites a little bit more, I can do that. I can increase those here. I could also come down and I could change the saturation. You can see I can modify that. I could modify the temperature. So it gives you just a starting place. And I think especially for winter images, it can usually help you determine what is going to be the best course moving forward. So back to this image, you can see there is my before. My white balance was really warm on this day, and you can see the after. Now for this image, I would do some cleanup. I would actually probably come in and crop it a little bit, clean up that post. And I just think it's a pretty view into this barn that's over here in this wintry scene. Here's another version. I actually like this one even better. So I think I would just crop it. And then really for speed of editing, I think again, I would go back to some of these presets. Look at that. That's just beautiful. They make your work easy and quick. I even really like that one. It looks very realistic to my scene. And this would be an image that I could take into Photoshop and maybe add some more layers on top of it. You could add some additional snowfall for fun. Just lots of options. So I hope this gives you some ideas as you work on frozen winter scenes. I also hope you'll play with some of those ideas that we discussed in the beginning in case you don't get snow in your area. I hope you'll try some of those frozen flowers and other subjects. Thanks so much.